And we're back again with Meeting of the Minds. Today with Olympic champion Kenny MindZ. We're excited to have him on board. Oh yeah, we're pumped. Another great one tonight. Meeting of the Minds. Meeting of the Minds. Mindset makes the difference. Again, make sure you text Mindset1 to 84576. So then this way you get our daily motivation text. So text Mindset1 to 84576. We're excited. All right, let's see. All right, team. So getting ready for Meeting of the Minds. What's going on, everyone? Good seeing everyone. Got the newspaper out today, and interesting here, when we look at NJSIAA, so that's the New Jersey State Athletic Association, starts sports task force for COVID-19. One of the things they're talking about here is possibly doing this they're thinking about possibly doing wrestling season in spring in New Jersey. We'll see about that. All right, here we go. Boom Monday. Let's bring them in. Connecting, and we're good. What's going on?
What's up? What's up?
How you doing?
I'm good, man. I just wrapping up coach's Zoom we had, and so UNC
awesome.
deal. So we just had to cut those deals short.
Yeah.
It's all good though. It's all good.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Good. All's well. Well. So, are you able to give us any information of what you're talking about, or any insight?
We're going to be better next year. That's all I can say.
That's it. We're going to be better.
We were one match. We wrestled UNC, which they ended up third in the country, and our match came down to the heavyweight, which is one of the most exciting matches I've ever been a part of, or just watching. And it came down to the heavyweight match, and the place was going crazy. Actually, they were pretty quiet. They were stunned. Yeah. NC State brings a great crowd too. And great matchups, man. Great matches all the way through. And it came down to the heavyweight, and they won that match. Close match, and they ended up winning. So that was, awesome. It was exciting.
Oh, yeah. All right. So I guess we got a lot to talk about. There's Kenny MindZ, the athlete. There's Kenny MindZ, the coach. Kenny MindZ, the father.
Yeah.
And where do we start?
Yeah,
I guess
all that.
So how is it? What's the difference between being an athlete versus coaching versus parenting?
Well, it's intertwined. It's still about being your best, and that kind of thing. But the difference is I can control when I'm wrestling. I can control what's going on out there, right? And so I don't ever remember approaching any match from the time I started not believing I could win the match. And so confidence was always huge for me, and I think my mom and my dad kind of instilled that in me early. And so I was always a very confident kid, and I didn't win all those matches, but you couldn't convince me that I wasn't going to win before it started, right? And so I think that's a big part of it. I can control it. When they're wrestling, I can't control it, man. I can't control what happens out there, and I can't control their work that they put in. I can give them all my advice and all the technical things and motivate them that way. But they've got to do the work. And that's the one thing that I've always expressed to them and always try to get over to them that I can show you all the technique and I can give you all my experience, but you've got to do the work, and that's up to you. And whatever you want out of this sport, you can get.
Absolutely. And now you said your parents set you up to be a very confident person, very confident athlete. How did they do that? What was it like?
I started wrestling when I was 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old. I have two older brothers, Mike and Jim. They started before I did at the YMCA. And when I first started, I was the smallest kid in the room. So I couldn't beat anybody. And so the next kid, my workout partner, the next kid to me, the bigger kid, had been wrestling for 2 years. So he had experience and he had size. And so every day I'd go into the room, I'd get my butt kicked every single day. But they just kept pouring belief into me, pouring belief in you. You can just stay after it. Don't give up. Keep trying. You're going to get better. And I did. Every day I got better. Every day I go back in. And it was never like a personal thing for me. It was a sport, right? And they always kind of made sure that we distinguished it was a sport from real life. So we weren't taking it really personal. So, right. And so I go in, man. I'm like, I'm going to get you today. His name was Winky Cole. And I went, Winky, I'm going to get you today, Winky. I'm going to get you today. He get me again. Next day, I'm like, today is my day. Today is, so every day was like that until I started chipping away at him. And I finally kind of passed him. But I think just instilling confidence and believing in yourself. And my mom always said that, and my dad always said that no one can believe in you more than you. I can believe in you, and your mom can believe in you. We can all believe in you, but no one should ever believe in you more than you. And so that always stuck with me. And so I'm like, man, I just got to believe. It's like you can do whatever you want. You can be whoever you want. They instilled that in me early. You got to work. You got to plan. And you got to focus. And you got to go after it. And so that's kind of what I did, man. And I never looked back from the time I started. Just never looked back.
Awesome. And that's a good point right there too. How you said that they said making a distinction between sports versus life. Like that's key, because a lot of us make identity meanings about ourselves. If we fail, if we succeed, it makes me a better person or a worse person. Talk about that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I hear athletes say things like, win and losing don't define who I am. And, that's true to a certain extent. But I think it's, wrestling, it's just a sport. Now, I grew up playing all sports, basketball, football, did a little bit of karate, a little bit of boxing. And so sports was huge in my life. And I grew up in a neighborhood that was just a fantastic neighborhood in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And we had so many great athletes, so many great families, and everybody, two-parent homes. And we were the hood before the hood was the hood, right? And so we would go and we play other neighborhoods, we play other streets, and I just grew up with just a fantastic neighborhood where it was just very competitive, and so that was just a big part of growing up, and it was always about being a good person, having a good character, living right, but and then I learned early the value of being a teammate. I had just a fantastic football coach when I was playing my first football coach. First time I had pads on, and he would just always stress the importance of being a great teammate. And so, man, I learned that early, man, just the value of teammates and being a great teammate and being there for your team and not letting your team down. And that's one of the things that my dad instilled in me too, is that, if I started something, then I was going to make sure I was there for the team. And I wasn't going to quit on the team. I wasn't going to be selfish. I was going to do everything I can to do my part, but then also help my teammate be better. So I grew up with that early on, man, and then just had a fantastic childhood as far as competition is concerned.
That's awesome. And then how do you take that and then into bringing that into parenting? You've 3 children, right? I
do. I have Sydney. Sydney's she's 25, and she works for Penguin Random House, publishing company out in New York, and so she's doing well. She graduated from Howard University, finished high school in 3 years, and
in the city. She's in the city.
She's in the city. Yeah. Well, she's
Oh,
home now.
she's
She's yeah. She's home. She's
so
been
she's
home
normally
for
right by me. I'm in the city.
yeah, yeah. Her office is in Manhattan, and
Okay.
she lives in Jersey City, and then so
Nice.
she goes to Manhattan every day. But yeah, she's doing really well. And then of course Kennedy is a rising senior this year, and then Quincy's a rising junior at Princeton. So they're all home, and I think just the lessons learned early on, just being a great teammate, and that goes in your family as well. You know, we support one another in whatever we do. If something comes up, we're behind them. If there's an achievement or there's something that they did well, we're backing them. We're cheering them up. If they had a setback, we're backing them. We're cheering up. And so it's really just about lifting each other up, and good times and the bad times, and knowing that whatever happens, that you can overcome it. And whatever happens, you can overcome it. So you just can't take everything so personal. But just having two great parents. Fortunately, my mom and dad are still alive, and my dad and my mom is 82, just turned 82 last a couple of weeks ago. My dad's 81, and so just two great parents, man, that was always in my corner, always trying to get me to do the right thing rather than the wrong thing. And then if I did the wrong thing, it was consequences behind that. And so that's just kind of how I lived, and how I teach my kids that you can be whatever you want to be in life, as long as you work hard, stay focused, keep doing the right things, right? And then just be a great teammate.
Yeah, it sounds like you really had really a great perspective. Parents,
Yeah.
yourself, and then
Yep.
being able to carry that with you, in wrestling and life. So then how about so now the boys wrestling. You're Kenny
Yeah.
Monday's son, or sons, two of them, right?
Yeah.
How do you get across to them? Okay, my career was my career, great. You're doing your thing. Dealing with that. What do you tell them with that?
It's not easy. It's definitely not easy, being my son. But I think, growing up, I didn't do a whole lot of, they didn't really know a whole lot about my career. They knew who I was, and sometimes they would get it from other people. Other people would come up and say, "Your dad was this, your dad was that," and they're like, "What? Really? You did that?" And so, and I just explained to them early, that a lot of the pressure that you're going to get from being my son, Olympic champion's son, it's going to come from other people. It's not going to come from me as such. We're going to always work hard. Like I said before, we're going to do the work. We're going to do the best you can. That's all I was really concerned with, is doing the best you can, giving your best effort, preparing yourself. I mean, there's things that you've got to do, of course, in the sport, in any sport, that's going to give you the best opportunity to win and be successful. So we try to nail those things down. But then after that, it's just about, doing your best. And, and I think now that they're getting into college, they can kind of see it now, where they've got their own path. They're making their own way. I mean, elementary and junior high and high school was a little different. Now that they've been in the sport, for 15 years, now they can see their own path. They can see the things that they are doing on a daily basis is going to help them be successful. So it's kind of out of my hands a little bit now. So they're out, they're doing their own thing, and I'm excited to see it, because now, I mean, I think they're both good enough to do whatever they want to do in the sport. They've been around a lot of good people, a lot of great coaches. They had some great competition, been in some good environments, and so now it's just it's up to them what they want to do as far as in the sport. They're doing well in school. Education is very important in our house, and so they're doing really well in the classroom, and they're good kids.
And they're 2 years apart.
They're 18 months apart, as far as age. But Quincy, he's a Princeton. They don't redshirt, and so he routes as a true freshman. Kennedy redshirted his freshman year, and so they're 1 year apart as far as eligibility, as far as wrestling, but 18 months apart in age group. And so
Were they
it's
always
so
very?
funny now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, they've always been pretty close. Kennedy's always been bigger, and he's still bigger. Quincy's catching him, but it wasn't really until until college that they're really able to start to kind of be able to train together. You know, because Quincy was really small in high school, and then I think in high school Quincy Rouse was 106, 113, and Kennedy was at 126 and 130. You know, so he was too big for him. Now they're at one point they were in the same weight class. They were both at 157, and Kennedy kind of outgrew the weight class, so he's at 165 now. So I think Quincy's almost caught him. I think he's like weighing 170, and Kennedy's like 175. So they're close. And so now they can actually really train together now, and so it's kind of fun to watch.
That's awesome. So they're weighing about 170, 175. So they're not cutting a lot of weight, not like ridiculous
Yeah.
anyway.
No, they really don't, man, and that's something that we've always kind of. There's been times where I think one time, and I think when Quincy was a sophomore in high school, he had to cut down to 13, and it had a growth spurt, and so for the team, we were trying to win a state title. For the team, he cut to 13, and that's probably his biggest cut he's ever done. Kennedy's never really cut very much weight. I think he weighs 172. He's around 65. He doesn't cut any weight. And then Quincy, he's wrestling 57. He's been weighing about 63, 64, 65. So he didn't really cut. He had an opportunity one time, I think, when Kalajic was at 49 the previous year, and then so he redshirted last year. And Quincy, we thought about going down to 49, but then he's like, man, this class work is his load is too heavy. I'm not cutting anyway. And so I'm like, yeah, good, man. So that's the one thing that I told them that I really didn't want them cutting that kind of weight. And a couple times in my career, I cut a little too much weight. That's the one thing that I thought that I would to do it again. I wouldn't cut as much weight as I cut, in college. And so that's something that I'm glad that they're not doing.
Yeah, we've always said that cutting weight doesn't make you a better wrestler. Becoming a better wrestler makes you a better wrestler, right? Of course, it's part of the sport.
That's right.
Everyone's got to pull a little weight here and there. But yeah, speak to that maybe a little bit for the middle school and high school kids, and even the parents who think, no, they have to get down to a certain weight all year round so they're competitive, so they're winning the tournament in May, June, July, those kind of things.
Well, growing up, it's always been a misconception of wrestling, and that's just it's been a bad part of wrestling because growing up, I seen it a lot. I've seen a lot of weight cuts, and like I said, I cut weight. I could have probably my junior year, I wrestled 142 my freshman year, 150 my sophomore year. I could have went up that next year, to 158, and I probably should have. But I was after Nate Carr. Nate beat me in the NCAA finals that year, and I was after him. So I'm like going back down to 50 to get this dude. But no, I think it's a misconception, and I think wrestling has evolved a little bit, of course, as far as the rules. Same day weigh-ins. When I was in college, we had 5 hours before the match. Before our matches started, and those guys got an hour. And so I think wrestling has definitely moved in that direction to try to get away from that stigma of cutting weight. We lose a lot of athletes,
yeah.
That they see kids cutting weight and they're like, man, I don't want any part of that. There's been a lot of football players that would have wrestled that didn't because of the weight cut issue. So it's definitely something that I think kids and parents need to, and it's just about, and now the information is so readily available for you to research nutrition and just doing it the right way, instead of trying to eat whatever you can, eat McDonald's and fries, and then just cut the weight off. Just eat right, do right, but there's a lot of information that parents can get, even if they didn't never wrestle. There's a lot of information that they can get and apply to the kid's career.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. And the other thing I was thinking about with your sons, now, what you said, they were pretty close growing up in terms of always being together, hanging out together?
Oh, yeah. They've always been, the best friends, and of course, as Kennedy got older, he kind of he went to high school. Of course, he kind of separated himself a little bit. He's a high school kid. He didn't want to hang out with the little brother. He wasn't in high school yet. So he kind of separated from him a little bit, doing his thing in high school. And they've always been close, and have always supported one another and had each other's back growing up. And they've always squabbled. always squabble in the house at some point, So,
I was going to
and
say, how
my
was
wife
it
was,
once they moved apart and they went, one North Carolina, other Princeton?
yeah, it was tough, man. It's been tough. It was really tough. I think when Kennedy went to school, the great thing about that is that we when I took the job at UNC as club coach, we came to Carolina as well, and so they were still in the same city, and so that helped, because we'd have still been in another city, then they'd have been really separate, but we were still in the same city with Kennedy, and so they were still able to see each other a lot. When Quincy went to Princeton, yeah, it was a it was an adjustment. It was an adjustment for
Sure.
them, I think. And they still support each other. They talk on the phone, that kind of thing. But they wasn't able to see each other on a daily basis. And so that was definitely an adjustment. Yeah, but Quincy's done a great job, man. He's done a great job of doing his own thing and his own path, and um, and he adjusted moving away from the house, and so he's really doing a good job.
That's great. That's great to hear. I know that was tough for me when my brother and I were always real close, me and Jeff. And
Right,
he went to an Ivy League school, University of Pennsylvania.
right,
I was at Rutgers for 3 years. And I mean, it's only an hour and a half apart, but we were pretty much
right,
inseparable. So it was a big adjustment until I
right.
transferred over to be with him.
Oh, is that right? Couldn't take it anymore, huh?
So we
Couldn't take
gotta
it.
get back together. So that was good.
I know. Of course, yeah, I ask Quincy all the time. Hey, you okay? We always got a spot for UNC. So he's
That's
like, I'm
right.
good, Dad. I'm good.
That's right.
So,
That's great
yeah.
stuff. Talk about some of your bigger influences as coaches that were the biggest influence on you growing up through high school, college, anything like that.
Yeah, man, that's a great question because I really, I was exposed to greatness early. Yeah, like I said, I started wrestling at the YMCA. We had, great role models, great coaches, great people. Other than my family, my mom and dad and brothers, my two older brothers, that they wrestled and kind of followed behind those guys. But I think the first coach was probably out of elementary school was my high school coach, Ernie Jones, and Ernie, we ended up winning 4 state titles at Booker T. Washington High School in Tulsa. And Ernie was a great coach, great guy, and he's still coaching. He's still
Yeah,
coaching at Cassia Hall in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and his
nice.
sons are running the Broken Arrow program in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and so his sons are running that program. And when I was in high school, they were like little bitty boys. They're like 4 or 5 years old, and so it's really good to see those guys take over their program. But he was probably one of the best coaches I had, high school coach. He really managed me well. I was a kind of a prodigy in high school and undefeated going through high school, and he kind of managed me well. He never let me get too big for my britches, and kept me humble and knew how to kind of manage me and keep me, on the right track.
How did he do that?
So I think he's just a great coach. He just would always talk about life. He would talk about things outside of wrestling, um, and just let me know that. And it got back to being a great teammate. We had great teams, but it got back to being a great teammate and really doing all I could. It wasn't just about me, because sometimes I'll get so wrapped up in my own matches in my own career and what I'm doing, what I needed, and but it always bring me back down to, hey, look, he would assign me to different guys. Like we had a couple of guys that started wrestling as sophomores and were state champions as seniors. And so we've had 4 or 5 guys that we get out of the hallway and we start them wrestling, and then they would develop. And so he would always put me with those young kids. He'd always make me be one of his side coaches. I was kind of like assistant coach the whole time, and so he would always kind of make me see the importance of it. And then it'd pay off. Those guys would get better, and we, like I said, we won 4 state titles, and so that was one of the reasons that one of the ways that he, kept me humble. He would make me work with the young kids.
And then how about then going through college and then the international scene?
But yeah, then after that, of course, as a kid, I would always, growing up in Oklahoma, I would always go down to Stillwater and watch Oklahoma State wrestle. I'd watch OU wrestle, and so I would watch those matches. So, like I said, when I was 10 years old, it was 1972 and I was 10. So that was one of the greatest teams ever, you know, and Gable and Wayne Wells. Wayne Wells is from wrestled at OU. He's an Oklahoma guy. And so I'd watch him through college. I got to watch Rick Sanders, Jimmy Carr, Chris Taylor. Got all those guys autographed when I was a kid. And so watching those guys, and Myron Roderick was a head coach before Chesbro got the job in 1971. And so we'd go down there and we'd watch him, and I got to meet him and went to a couple camps from Myron Roderick. And so he was another one that influenced me, and I got to watch his teams and watch the way he coached. And I was just a student, man. I was a sponge. I would watch the great guys wrestle, but I would also watch the coaches, and I would watch how he interacted with the wrestlers, and you know how he motivated them, how he talked to them whether they won or lost, how he handled them coming off the mat. And so I just kind of keyed in on that, right? And so I learned a lot from him, from Myron Roderick. And then, of course, Tommy Chesbro was my college coach, and he took over for Myron Roderick and won a national title in 1971 as a team. And so I got to watch that team. And so watching him, and then he, of course, ended up wrestling for him in college. And then him, and then Stan Abel was at OU, and Mickey Martin was there before him. And so just watching those teams compete, and so those guys are all influences of mine. And then, of course, you know, watching Gable as he came up through and won a gold medal, and then went on into coaching, and so watching him grow. And I remember being when I was a senior in high school, and I went to the national tournament. I ran into Gable, and they really wasn't recruiting me, right? And but I was, you know, recruited by just about everyone. So I saw Gable, and he came up, and he saw me. Hey, he said, "You're Kenny Monday, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, I said, how you doing, Coach? And he goes, well, have you ever thought about wrestling for University of Iowa? We'd love to have you. I said, Coach, man, no disrespect. I love you, a big fan, but I want to wrestle against you guys. You know, I want to wrestle against Iowa, right? Because growing up in Oklahoma, we would go to Iowa, and we had dual meets as a kid. And I wrestled Barry Davis one time. When I was in 8th grade, I wrestled Barry Davis, you know, dual meet. Oh, in the tournament. And I didn't even know who he was, but he was just a tough match, man. And I didn't find out who he was until, of course, I knew him later. We're teammates later, but I was going through my dad's closet one time, and I found an old bracket, and looking through the bracket, and it was Emmitsburg, Iowa, 8th grade, 99 pounds, and I had Barry Davis in my bracket. I beat him 9-0, and somebody said, "Man, that was Barry Davis." I knew that kid, and he was tough. Maybe earned every point. I pinned the kid in the finals, but he was the guy, right?
Yeah.
And so that was after the Olympics. And so next time I said, I can't wait to see Barry. So next time I saw him, I go, Barry, I was going through my dad's closet. I pulled out this bracket, and there you go. Yeah, Monday, you kicked my butt.
He probably remembered.
No, he remembered. He did. He remembered. Because he said, yeah, you kicked my butt. And he never forgot it. I didn't know who he was. And but yeah, I knew he was a tough kid.
That's right. No, we tend to remember the ones we lost a little bit better.
Right. Exactly.
So all those great influences. Now, how did they get you ready? Because obviously we talk a lot about mindset. How did they get you ready mentally? And there's, of course, many different things. How to get you prepared right before the match, what you should be telling yourself. Managing your emotions throughout the course of the tournament. Believing in yourself and the adversity, dealing with adversity when it comes your way. How did those coaches influence you mentally?
Well, yeah, and I think, you know, I never had a problem with confidence, like I said earlier. Never had a problem believing in myself. Of course, the times that I would lose matches, you know, they'd pick me up and say, you know, and just technically this is what we got to do, this is what we got to do, keep your head up, and help me in that regard. I remember my freshman year in college, and I was seeded 4th going to I had a pretty good, I never redshirted, had a pretty good year going to the national tournament. I think I lost to Mesker, was a champion that year. I lost to Mesker twice because he was at OU. I lost to Zaleski at Iowa. I lost to Brown from Iowa State. I think I had maybe four or five losses going to the national tournament. Seeded fourth, and I made it. It was in the quarterfinals, and I lost in the quarterfinals. A match, crazy match, 12-11, and came back and lost the next round, and I'm out of the tournament. And so I couldn't remember the last time I'd been out of a tournament. Maybe my first year of wrestling had I been beat out of a tournament. And so I didn't know how it felt. It was like the weirdest feeling. I had never felt that. And I was like, after that match, I'm like, I went up to Chesbro and I'm like, man, I couldn't even really say it. I'm like, I'm out. He goes, kind of chuckle. He goes, yeah, you're out. You're out, and that's it. So just go eat and relax, but you'll win it next year. You'll come back and win it next year. So keep your head up, So he just kind of kept my head up, and he got after me that summer though. We went to work that summer, and he really got after me and not let me have an off summer. So he really got after me, and he really wasn't a freestyle coach. Chesbro wasn't a freestyle coach, but he got after me that next summer, and he got me ready. And of course, I was in the finals the next 3 years.
Nice. Talk about rivalries, and of course, you think you and Nate Carr, you and Dave Schultz. How does that help you elevate to the next level? What's it like dealing with a rival in front of you that you back and forth with and everything, and just the mental approach towards it, and also how it makes you better?
Yeah, I think I've had rivals since the time I started wrestling, and way back when I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. My first rival was a kid by the name of Luke Gilpin, and Luke was just a fantastic little wrestler. He's like a little child prodigy. He had won Tulsa, a couple times, and so he was just mopping everyone up, wiping everybody out. And of course, first time I wrestled, first couple times I wrestled, he beat me pretty good, and so he was a target. And so he's the one that got me up in the morning. When I go run before school. I do my push-ups at night. And so rivals make, if you really want to get better, they make you better, right? And so, even back, that was my first rival, and I finally got to the point where I could beat him, and I was dominating him, but it took a while, and it took that extra work. It took that extra focus. So right then, that taught me about rival. It taught me how to prepare, how to believe, how to get the work done. And so I had that pretty much. That was my first introduction to rivals. But then I think Nate Carr was probably my next rival, and Nate took me to another level.
Yeah,
he took me to another level, and because he was such a tough competitor, when I first wrestled Nate, he was the defending champ. He won the year before when I was a freshman at 42. He won it at 150. So the next year I went up to 50, and so the first time I wrestled was a dual meet, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, and I beat him. And he beat the defending champ, right? And then so, of course, Nate was, walking around like, dude, you can have that one. I'm going to get you the next one, right? So Nate was always a big talker, And then I beat him in the Big 8. And then so I had 2 wins, though. So going to the national tournament, I was seeded first in the national tournament going in. Then Nate beat me in double overtime in the finals. And then we went again, kind of the same scenario the following year. But, Nate was such a tough competitor. And again, I had to focus, man. I had to focus. I couldn't make mistakes. And so it really took me to another level as far as living right. Of course, doing the work, getting the work done, studying, being a better person as far as my lifestyle. Getting the rest, making sure that I got my business done before wrestling. Getting the work done. And so it was just about focusing and just really believing in yourself. And so that was Nate took me to another. Nate made me better. We made each other better, and we sit down, we talk about it all the time. But so then the last time I wrestled Nate was in 1987 World Team Trials, and he had beat me in the U.S. Open in the last second match, last second move. But I beat him. That was the last time we wrestled. I beat him 5-0 and 8-1. and that was the last time I wrestled him. Then, so after that, we were talking, and of course Dave was the number one guy, and Dave beat me in the '87 World Team Trials. And then so after the tournament, I'm like, Nate, man, you should go down, and you should go down to 149. And then because I'm making this team, I'm making this Olympic. This is in '87, '88 next year, right? I said, Nate, you should go down, and we can both make the team, and we can train together. And Dave said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that, right? And then so I said, all right, think about it. So a couple of weeks later, he called me and said, all right, buddy, I'm going down. And so he went down to 149. And so then I was at 63 because Mesker was the number one guy at 149, and Dave was the number one guy at 63. And they were both fox catcher. Me and Nate was sun-kissed. So then Nate came to Stillwater. We trained together. And so, man, our matches were nothing compared to our workouts. People
Really?
thought, man, oh my God. Oh my goodness. I mean, because then there's no pressure. You know, you just train, there's no pressure. You know, you're not living and dying on every takedown. And so, oh my goodness. And so we would go from one end of the room to the other room. And Nate was the fastest guy I've ever competed against. Fast switch, explosive. And he had so much. And I could see Jimmy Carr, his brother. Jimmy would get under you and toss you in a minute, man. This guy had some of the best hips ever. And Nate was kind of the closest car to Jimmy, and as far as that was concerned, right? And so, but man, we had some incredible workouts. It was just fantastic. He made me better. You know, he made me better. He prepared me for the Olympic Games. That's for sure. Each other for sure. You know, and then of course Dave and I wrestled 14 times.
Wow.
And, yeah, he beat me the first 3. And then I beat him in '87 World Team Trials. It was 2 out of 3. He beat me the first one. I beat him the second one. He beat me the third one to make the team in '87. And then after '87, I beat him 10 straight matches. And but Dave, I still have anxiety behind Dave. I mean, Dave was the kind of guy I had to focus so hard to overcome just everything that he had. And he had so many weapons, and so just to focus and watch him wrestle and watch him compete, and then get inside his mind was just. I mean, I didn't know I was capable of getting there until I got there. You know, I mean, this guy was. You could say Dave's name like in '87 before the Olympic trials in '87. You could say his name and I'd break out in a sweat. You know, so he made me great, man. He really made me dig deep and go to places I never thought that I could. As far as just my training, my mindset, my focus, I can't even explain the nights that I had preparing for Dave Schultz. So he took me to another level.
Awesome. Now, Coach, how do you balance focusing on what you're going to do versus not getting being aware of their tools, but not getting overly preoccupied with that? We see a lot of athletes struggle with that when they have a rival. It becomes maybe a little too much about them and less about us. Right. How do you balance that?
Yeah, and that's just the thing. I knew that because I would try to emulate Dave in certain positions. Of course, you know, when I'm training, I'm like trying to do some of the things that he did, kind of. And so, but I understood that if I could master myself, if I could do the things that I do well for the whole match and not get tired, then I'd have a chance to beat him. I think I could beat him, you know, because I had some good tools, and I believed in myself again. But if I could do what I did well, better than what he does, then I'd come out on top. And so that was my focus. I just focused on the things I do well. I just mastered them. You know, my shots, you know, my positioning, my underhooks, not getting turned. You know, Dave was just a master on top, man. He had a lace that was just, you know, phenomenal. And so just getting better in those positions, spending the time in those positions, you know, made me better. But I knew that I had to get great at what I did. So I couldn't focus so much on what he did. only, and I did just to be able to stop it because I had to stop his technique. But man, I hit Dave with singles, doubles, firemen's. I threw him. I mean, so all of those things I had to master in order to execute on it.
Yeah. And I'm sure you probably see with your athletes, also your sons, or maybe at different points in their career, where, you know, dealing with what they're focusing on before the match and during the
Right.
match, making sure it's the right things as opposed to the wrong things. Can you talk about that a little bit, where maybe some athletes get hung up on the wrong things?
Right. Right. Yeah, that's individual. I think because everybody's different. Everybody handles pressure a little different. You know, my message is to do the work, prepare yourself. Because if you're not prepared, you're not going to give yourself the best opportunity. If you're not prepared, then doubt is going to set in. You're going to start doubting yourself, and if you can't, uh, if you get tired, then you're not going to be able to execute. If you get tired, technique doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what single double. That doesn't matter if you're getting tired, right? So first and foremost, you got to be in shape enough to execute your technique, throughout the match. But then after that, it's just about doing your best. It's about preparing yourself, going out there, believing in your abilities, believing in who you are, and just doing your best, man. Don't beat yourself. Don't get caught up in the pressure of it. Don't get caught up in what people think. You go out there and be yourself and do your best. I'm gonna be proud. You're gonna be proud of yourself, and you won't have any regrets. So it's just about it's really what I focus on with them is just belief, believing in yourself, and that confidence that you can beat anybody that you step on the mat with. Anybody you step on the mat with, you can win. But you got to prepare yourself mentally and physically. And mentally is just about knowing who you are, knowing your the things that you do well, and it goes back to doing what you do well better than your opponent, right? So focus on what you do well. Don't try to be someone else. Focus on what you do well, and get after it, man. Just give it your all, give it your best. Don't leave anything on the mat.
Yeah. I guess what gets a lot of athletes to the next level is they're focusing on their improvement areas, their weaknesses,
Right.
if you want to call it that. So they have to be very honest with themselves. I got to
Right.
get better in these areas. But at the
Right.
same time, they tend to then focus too much on that
Right.
as opposed to what you're saying. What do you do well?
Right. That's right. That's right. You're right. And it's tough, man. It's a tough sport. It really is a tough sport. And I've played all sports, and it's really a tough grind. But of course, injuries come into play, and all those things come into play, and sometimes you can't control those things, and so it's really about controlling what you can control, and not beating yourself. Not thinking somebody. I mean, Kennedy, for prime example, he's going to the tournament this year, and he's got Chinzo's second match at NCAA, and the bracket come out, and so he was ready, man. He was prepared. He was really mentally prepared for that match, and so it kind of breaks my heart not to see it come to fruition because he was prepared for it, man. He was really ready to knock him off, and everybody thought that, of course, waiting to see him, him and the Iowa kid Russell, but Kennedy was ready mentally for that match, So it's just about believing in yourself. It goes back from from the time I started wrestling, and I never changed. I never changed in my approach as far as my belief system. And if you got a system of belief, right? If something goes wrong, it's layers of your belief system, right? And so it comes back to what you did, the week before, what you did a month before. How did you set yourself up, to for that success? And so a belief system is something that you kind of ingrain in them, and then when something goes wrong, you don't panic. You know that you can overcome you can overcome obstacles. You can overcome getting taken down in the first period. You can overcome getting off your back and come back and win the match, right? But that's your belief system. It's not giving up. Still believing that you can come out on top. So.
That rock solid foundation. That's
That's
what
right.
you're saying there, which is big, and that also stems with having that perspective. That yes, I love wrestling. Of course, I want to succeed, but it's not
Right.
everything. It doesn't completely define me. There's life out there. There's other things that are going on too. That's big. What
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
You mentioned that you played multiple sports. What would your opinion be about that for athletes now? Should they be playing multiple sports, and up until what age should they start really specializing? What are your thoughts with that?
I played through high school. I didn't play my senior year, and I was a free safety and had a great, fantastic season. I played football, man, since I was in I think the second, third grade, right? So every year I played and loved the sport, loved the game. Probably my second greatest love, other than wrestling. And I think the only reason I love wrestling more is because it's an individual sport, and I
Right.
can control my wins and losses. I can control my tears and my smiles,
Yeah.
so to speak. And so, but no, I played, and the only reason I didn't play my dad taught me how to play my senior year, and I still want that year back. But no, I think once you get out of high school, then it's kind of hard to be in college and do multiple sports. Of
Yeah.
course, it's very difficult, especially academics and those things. But I don't think it's imperative that guys specialize in one sport. Wrestling has changed now than it was when I was growing up. Now you got guys that club programs or I think, in my opinion, and I think it's revolutionized the sport of wrestling
Yeah.
because guys can run a business, have a club and run a business and succeed and do well. I ran a club for 10 years in Texas. Monaco, and I kind of got some cues from him, but that was kind of before it took off. The guys were doing it for a livelihood, and because wrestling's always been different. And I always wondered as a kid. I would see a karate school on every corner, man. There's always a karate school. Of course, I grew up in the Bruce Lee era, and everybody was doing karate, and but I never understood why wrestling couldn't follow that model. And I remember talking to Chesler, my college coach, and he said, "Money, what do you want to do after college?" And I said, "Man, I think I want to run a wrestling school, kind of like the karate school." And he's like, it's a good idea, but I just don't think it works. People aren't paying for wrestling. People aren't paying to send their kid, to get wrestling lessons, and it just wasn't. It just wasn't the norm. It was just like taboo almost. And but I always thought that was a possibility. And I thought it would be a viable business that people can do, and now you're seeing it. You're seeing it today. Um, but I think playing all other sports, I think wrestling is such a demanding sport. I think you got to have great agility, great strength, and so all those sports just kind of gives you the ability to build your body and build that competition. Competition is great, man, and I've always been competitive. I'll compete in anything from ping pong to the pool to basketball. And I never played basketball because it was always in the season of wrestling, but I always played sandlot basketball. I was always on a playground playing again because we had a lot of great athletes, man. I had Wayman Tisdale grew up and I went to high school with Wayman Tisdale. We played basketball. John Starks grew up with him, So a lot of great athletes come out of Tulsa.
Oh wow.
But I was
Legit.
yeah, I was out.
Great athletes.
Yeah, yeah. I'm always playing basketball on the playground, right? And so love the sport, But no, I think guys can spread themselves around, and I think wrestling, you can still be successful doing other sports.
Because I just think a lot of parents and kids have the misconception, like in even like sixth, seventh grade, they say,
Right.
hey, if they don't start specializing now, forget it. They're not going to come into college, high school competitive. High school.
Right. Yeah, but you see it though. You see the
Yep.
development of these kids now, man. Growing up, when I was running a club, of course, that was back when of course, David Taylor was. I remember he was, little bitty kid, and I was talking to his dad, and we talk about. I was running the club, and I'd see him at Tulsa Nationals, and we talk about managing his kid. And I'd had a couple meetings with him, and as far as how to manage a superstar, kind of thing. And so we had those discussions. But he was specializing. He was doing straight wrestling. He was going here, there, workout partners here, workouts here, and training camps here. And so, I grew up watching all those guys do that, and had some training camps for him. And I was in camps with Lance Palmer and those guys. And so you see that today. You see guys specializing, and you see a better kid coming up. But I still, I think it's kind of hard to play basketball and wrestle, but football is always a great sport. You can always kind of do both sports. I think wrestling, I love the idea if wrestling can get away from basketball a little bit. Maybe if we can start wrestling season in January, I think it would be great. Kind of get out and get away from basketball a little bit, so you can maybe be able to do both sports. But no, I love all sports, man. I really do, and I think it helps those kids learn the value back to being a great teammate. Because sometimes in the sport of wrestling, especially growing up, because you're on teams, but it's more individual now than it was when I was growing up. When I grew up, I had a full-on elementary team, and we did dual meets twice a week before the weekend tournament. And so it was more of a team atmosphere. Now, you get a kid, and you can just go to tournaments. You can just train with your team, but you're still going to tournaments as individuals, So you really don't have that team concept. And so it's really different for the young kids growing up now. But I think the value of being a great teammate, man, is those guys miss that if they're just doing wrestling.
That's a very important point, because life is about being a great teammate, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Business,
Absolutely.
Family. If you're not a great teammate, forget it.
Absolutely. I think you can go back and talk to anybody that's been on my team. And I'm not patting myself on the back, but if go back and talk to anybody that's ever wrestled with me from the time I started, they would tell you that I put a lot of value in being a great teammate. A lot of value. I learned it early, and it was always a big part of me. Like I said, my high school, we won 4 state titles. And in college, we lost to Iowa. We were second behind Iowa twice. And we had an opportunity when my senior year, we really had a best opportunity to win my senior year. John Smith, he kind of had the same story I did. John was seeded 4th my senior year, he was a true freshman, seeded 4th in the national tournament, got beat first round. That kid lost the next round. He's out. He didn't score points for us my senior year in college, so he kind of cost us the national title. But he made up for it later. But no, just always had a lot of value in being great teammates and being there. I mean, I would get up early in the morning. I would stay late at night. And anything I would do to help my teammate be successful, because I didn't want to just win. I wanted everybody around me to win. I wanted my circle to win. And I'm like that today. I'm like that today. You hear the guys that's in UNC's room and we're training Jordan Oliver and everybody's in our circle. I want those guys to win. I want those guys to be successful, because it just makes the sport funner. Makes what we do much more fun. And but it goes a long way. I mean, guys never forget it.
That's such an important point, Coach. And I think in wrestling we don't hit on that enough. I don't hit on that enough. I guess maybe a lot of wrestlers think if we're thinking about the team, we're not thinking about ourselves. And I can't control them. And I just got to do my thing. Right. So
and a lot of times, man, that takes the pressure off of you. It really does. I mean, I try to get that across to my kids. Like, look, if you're spending time helping your teammate, and you're trying to get him ready, you're taking kind of the pressure off of yourself, right? And then so it's really not more. It's about your team, and it kind of takes a little bit of that pressure off, So because you're really into what he's doing. You're really into what he's doing, and you're watching him too, right? So if he's wrestling, and I would always watch my teammates. And so when it came out, if there was something that they wasn't doing, then I'm like, man, this is what I see. I mean, I remember training with John, getting ready for make the 88 team. When I went back to Oklahoma State in 87, if there was something that he was doing that I saw that he could do better, that I saw that there was an area he was getting stuck. And I'm like, man, this is what I see. I remember him training for Randy Lewis. I'm like, man, this is something what I see. When I watched him develop that low single, like, man, you got to stay below these guys' knees, you know. And so I watched them develop, and if it was something I saw, then I'm like, I'm pouring into him. And if it was something he saw, he was pouring into me, right? And so that's something that you gotta, you know, really focus on trying to be a better teammate. And like you said, it stays with you for the rest of your life. You know, whatever you're doing, it stays with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, like you said, it's being a good person. It's developing that virtue for later in life, and just in the, you know, just as you're a student, a teammate, all of that. It's more fun.
Yeah.
And also, as you said, instead of our vision being so tunneled right here, I got to do this, I got to do that. It's me, me, me. The pressure really mounts. If you're thinking about everyone, okay, I'm one link in the chain. You're able to be a little bit more free.
That's right. That's right. If you study the great teams, and you see that inside that locker room, you see that. You look at and that's what Penn State, you know, that's why those guys are so good. You look at, you know, the Iowas, that's what Oklahoma State, you know, you study the great teams and you see the characteristics of that team, they're great teammates. You see those guys pulling for each other. You see them, like when those guys are wrestling, they're not in the back, you know, doing their own thing, or they're not over here on their phone. I mean, they're into that match and they're pulling for their guy. When the guy wins, they're like, yeah, they're giving it to him, right? And so that is a sign of the great team. And you can see it. You know, it's not a secret. You see it, man. And the great coaches make sure that guys understand that.
That's great. That's great. Last question, then Instagram's going to wind up cutting us off because it's an hour, but it feels like it just flew by. The approach mentally from one Olympics to the next, was there a difference or basically the same thing?
Oh, I would say the approach is probably a little different. You know, I think, you know, once you go through the Olympic Games and you get that experience, you kind of know what to expect, right? And then once you're on the circuit, you kind of know who's out there. You know, no one's really creeping up on you. You kind of know who's out there. And so really nothing really changed. You know, I think the era that I came in was, you know, Schultz and Baumgartner and Kevin Jackson and Chris Campbell, and guys that wanted to be legends, guys that they didn't want to just win, you know, one title. Those guys wanted to win multiple titles. And John wanted to win multiple titles. And so being in that era around some of the greatest wrestlers ever, you know, it kind of made you better, but it made you approach the competition with a bigger vision. My vision was, you know, at the end of the day, I think the question that I wanted to ask myself was that was the question that I wanted answered, was how good could I be? And once I knew that I was getting good and getting to a level, I wanted to know how good I could be. I wanted that question answered, right? And so I wasn't going to stop till I got my answer to that, right? But I wanted to be a legend. At the end of the day, I wanted to be in the conversation of one of the best ever, right? And the guys that I were around, you know, that was their focus. That was their vision. You know, they wanted to win for a long time, you know, and set themselves apart. And so I was blessed to be around some of the best coaches in the world, some of the best wrestlers in the world, and blessed to have competed against some of the best wrestlers ever. You know, from Varayev, Fedzayev, Sateyev, Schultz, Carr, Kevin Jackson, Melvin Douglas, Chris. I mean, I've been around and wrestled with some of the best people ever. Been around Gable. Gable was in the room. He never really coached me. He was I think he was head coach in one team. I think our World Cup team one year. And so being around him, being around Bobby Douglas, one of the greatest coaches ever, Chris Chesbro, Joe Say. So I've been around some of the best ever and got to wrestle some of the best ever, and so it's really been a fulfilling career.
That's awesome. Coach, thank you so much for all the great insights. I'm going to have to go through it. I want to take notes in my notebook. I hope our listeners do. Thank you again for everything. Send me any links where you want me to send people for your team, for anything social media, website. We'll kick people your way. Thank you.
Coach Buxton, how you doing, man? Coach Buxton is saying hi, and he's a great coach. We love competing against him, and
That's it.
now we're coaching together, and he's a great coach, man. He's always been
Awesome.
a guy that
It's
did a
kicking us
great
off.
job.